Hello, fellow readers and booktubers. There is a new booktuber among us, and her name is Kim at The Lifelong Reader. I believe she joined BookTube in August of this year, and since that time she has posted 12 videos. Today is November 1st, 2025, so as of today, 12 videos and over 600 subscribers. I think she should have many, many more, and I'm sure she will in time as more and more people begin to view her videos. She shares a lot of interesting insights into her reading life and the books that she chooses. And some of the videos she'll include prompts at the end. She doesn't label these videos as tags, but they essentially are. And in Bookish Chat episode 3, she included 3 questions that I found particularly interesting. Let me just read how she introduces this on the video, and I'll put the link to this below. Hi readers, today I ask and share my answers to 3 bookish questions to stimulate your reader's mind. Share your answers to each of these questions in the comments or post your own reply video to get an even stronger conversation going. The questions in this episode, and then there are the 3 questions, and I really like these questions, so I want to share my response to them. The first one is, who is an author you've read to completion or plan to? And by completion, I'm assuming she means you've read everything this particular author has published. And the first name that leapt to my mind was Kurt Vonnegut. I believe I've read everything he published, including his nonfiction work, his essays. It's very interesting. Vonnegut I've always found really enjoyable. He's always very witty. He's always made me laugh out loud. His earlier novels are very thoughtful as well. I saw an interview with Vonnegut a number of years ago, and he talked about how you can almost, on like a bell curve, you can chart his talent getting better and better, and then his talents begin to deplete with his last few novels, and I think there's some truth in that. But he was always a great joy for me to read. So I think I've read pretty much everything that Vonnegut ever published. And then I've read all of Shakespeare's plays. A number of them more than once. I haven't read all of his sonnets, though. I'm not exactly sure how I missed that, but I can say that I've read all of Shakespeare's plays. And so we begin with Vonnegut, the modern writer, Shakespeare, the late Renaissance playwright, and then to go back even further into antiquity of all the ancient writers. And those of you who watch my videos on a regular basis, you know I love and the ancient world, particularly the Greek and the Roman worlds, and I've read a great deal of the writings from those worlds. And the big one there that I read to completion was the Roman historian Titus Livius, and I'm reading these in the wonderful Loeb collections, the Loeb edition, and that's in 14 volumes, and I've read all 14 volumes of Titus Livius. Another ancient writer who I've almost read to completion, but not quite, is someone a bit more prolific, or at least more of his work has survived, and that's Cicero. Okay, I've read, in the Loeb editions, there are 30 volumes. I've read all but 2. For some reason, I missed volume 11, which I plan to read very soon. And then the last volume, volume 3, which is actually just fragments of his writings that have survived. Usually the fragments of ancient writings are, well, they're just that. They're fragments. They can just be a couple of paragraphs or even a few sentences. But they're of great historical interest. And but anyway, so I plan to finish reading all of Cicero soon. Other writers that I want to complete, Charles Dickens. I've always liked Dickens. As many of you know, Dickens novels are quite large. They require a real... if you're going to read Dickens, you have to be willing to dedicate your time to reading through one of his novels. But I find him a great joy. But I haven't read, of his 15 novels, I've read, I believe, 6 of them. Oliver Twist, Pickwick Papers, Tale of Two Cities, David Copperfield, Great Expectations, Bleak House. I've read some of his short story collections. I also have a collection of his essays that he wrote about London, which are interesting. But I think, maybe that'll be my project for next year, to finish reading all of Charles Dickens. Also, I think, Thomas Pynchon. who I've always enjoyed. I have not read his recent novel, Shadow Ticket, which I believe is probably going to be his last novel. I read somewhere that he's in his mid-80s now. But, I've read, V, Crying of Lot 49, and a few others, but I've never read Mason and Dixon. I've not read Against the Day. And maybe that'll be another project for next year to round out all my readings of all of Thomas Pynchon's work. And then, of course, I'll have to give yet another stab at Gravity's Rainbow. I think this will be probably my fourth time to get through that one. Although I've noticed other booktubers have posted videos about reading Gravity's Rainbow and have given some helpful hints on how to get through that one. But yeah, I think Pynchon is a writer I'd like to read to completion. Pynchon and Dickens, and then of course Cicero. Okay, all right. Question number 2: who is an author you don't plan to read anymore, and why? Again, I'm going with my first impressions on this one, and I would have to go with Ernest Hemingway. I've only read a few of his novels, and I read a collection of all of his short stories. It's hard to explain what it is about Hemingway that puts me off a little bit. He had a very unique writing style, and it was so unique that a lot of his novels almost read like self-parodies, And also, his novels, he hits that alpha male thing pretty hard, almost too hard, and I find that quite off-putting. But there's just something in Hemingway's novels, and I know he's regarded as one of the great American authors. As I said, I've read some of his books, but there's just something there that I found kind of artificial. Let's just leave it at that. So I don't know if I'll ever go back to Hemingway. I really can't think of any other authors that I would never go back to ever again. I'm pretty lenient and pretty tolerant of authors that I like. If I read a couple of their novels and then I hit one that's bad, I won't give up. I'll give them another chance. So the only one I could come up with there is Ernest Hemingway. Who is an author you'd like to have dinner with? Who you'd like to have dinner with, and why? This question, this is that famous question: if you could have a dinner party with 10 famous people, living or dead, who would you choose? And it always reminds me of that observation that's sometimes made that you should that it's always dangerous to meet your heroes because they're never going to quite live up to the image that you have of them. But of the authors that I've mentioned so far, well, of course, Kurt Vonnegut passed away a few years ago, but I think he would have been a wonderful dinner companion if you could catch him at a moment when he was a bit more talkative. Quite a few years ago in Chicago, they had done a stage version of Vonnegut's novel, The Sirens of Titan. And I knew a couple of people involved in that production. And Vonnegut would visit the rehearsals, and they would consult with him on how to stage this novel. And they said that sometimes he was really talkative and very funny, but other times he was quite reserved and withdrawn and very quiet. So, I don't know, have dinner with Kurt Vonnegut, catch him at a time when he's talkative, that would be wonderful. Shakespeare, Dante, no. That would be like having dinner with the gods. And how could you have dinner with a god? What would you say? There would be nothing to say. Thomas Pynchon, yeah, I think that would be interesting. I think he's a very interesting guy. I'd be curious to see if he's as paranoid as his novels suggest he might be. Cicero, the great Roman statesman who I've already mentioned. Cicero? Yes, I think he would be really interesting. He was around as the Roman Republic was disintegrating, and he was in the upper echelons of society. He knew all the movers and the shakers, from Mark Antony to Julius Caesar, even Cleopatra. And Cicero is a notorious gossip. I think he would be a lot of fun to talk to. So I think that's everything I've got for you now. So anyway, thank you, Kim, the lifelong reader. I'll put a link to her BookTube site there, and I recommend all of you subscribe. She deserves thousands of followers. That's all I have for you today. Stay strong and keep reading.